I got a question in this week, and I thought it was such an amazing question that I wanted to make this video and speak into it. The question comes from Kiara. She says, I was wondering if you could speak into something. I often hear it said that all men want is sex. Now, obviously, I know that's not true, absolutely, but I was wondering how true it is. Like, is there any truth to it? And if so, can you explain how that works? I hope this makes sense. Thanks. Well, I love this question, Kiara, and one of the things I love about this question so much is it shows that you're a critical thinker. It shows that you're able to see that there is truth to something and also recognize that that thing is not absolutely true. So in this video, I'm going to talk about this idea that all men want sex and where this idea comes from and how much truth there actually is to it. Let me begin this video by saying that the idea that all men want is sex is not true. It's a myth. But all myths, if you look at any myth in our society, all myths have some truth in them. There was some truth that existed that gave rise to that myth and had that myth become what it is. So this myth that all men want sex is based in a certain amount of truth. And I want to talk about what that truth is and also like what you're supposed to do with that as the viewer of this video. So where does this idea that all men want sex come from? Where does this myth come from? Well, as far as I can tell, this myth comes from the fact that men have this biological drive, this psychological, biochemical drive to spread their seed, to reproduce. I'm trying to say that in the cleanest way possible, right? But they have this drive to go out and reproduce. And this isn't new information. If you look at nature, if you look at the way this plays out in nature, the male part of the species goes out and spreads its seed to reproduce and keep the population going. Now, I can only think that this could be related to, and I'm not a woman, so, forgive me if I say something wrong here, but I know this from speaking to my wife and from speaking with many other women, and I can only assume that this must be related to the way many women feel about bringing a child into the world. So, again, from speaking to my wife, from speaking to many women, I know that a lot of women feel compelled in this powerful way to bring life into the world. Like it's wired into their biology. It's just like they know that one of the things they're meant to do in this life is to bring a child into the world. Now, maybe that's not all women, but I know a lot of women have that experience. And I think that must be similar to the experience that men have about this biological drive to go out and reproduce and keep the population going is the same way that women feel about bringing life into the world. But I think women and men experience this dynamic, this natural drive. I think we experience it very differently, and that leads to a lot of misunderstanding around it. So going back to this myth that men only want sex, I really think that's where it comes from. It comes from the fact that in nature, we observe that the male part of the species tends to go out and spread its seed and reproduce. And I want to say that men who operate on lower levels of consciousness are almost completely driven by that drive. So they're almost completely dominated by that drive. That there's not a lot of logical or responsible thinking going on for a man when he's completely overcome by that drive. Now, I'm going to say that this drive exists in all men, as far as I could tell. There's not a single man who has escaped it, as far as I could tell. There might be, but I don't really think so. And from working with a lot of men, from my friends, and we've talked about this, I think this is something that all men experience. But in the same way that I don't think it's responsible for a woman to have a bunch of children that she's not prepared to take care of, or she's not prepared to create a future for, like in the same way that I don't think that's a responsible thing to do, I don't think men to just go out and spread their seed wherever they can, I don't think that is a responsible thing to do either. And this is what I think is different between human beings and animals, where we look at nature and we say, well, that's the way it happens in nature. But we are more sophisticated. We have more thinking capacity. We have the ability to reason and to look at the consequences of our actions. And I think men who operate at a higher level of consciousness have the ability to look at themselves and recognize that this drive is there, and also recognize that I have the level to reason and assess the consequences of my actions and assess how my choices are going to affect another person. And that means I have a responsibility to conduct myself in a way that is loving and kind and considerate of the people around me and the people I interact with. So I'm not using this drive as an excuse for men to do whatever they want, because I absolutely think that men should not just do whatever they want. I think we should be considerate of how our actions and our choices affect people around us, and especially the women that we relate with. But this is what I want to say. I want to say that in a lower level of consciousness, a man is not going to have that level of consideration. So he's not going to look around and see, okay, if I make this choice to maybe push through the situation and get what I want from this woman, he might not have the ability to go like, how is that going to affect her? How is she going to feel about that tomorrow? What impact is that going to have on her and her life? He might be completely overcome by that in the moment. Now, again, I'm not excusing him. I think a man who is operating like that has a lot of growing up to do it, and he needs to, because he's hurting people. And I don't think that's right. But I think if you can understand why it is happening that way, that gives you some power as the viewer of this video. Because what you want to do is understand that, okay, if you're out there looking for a man to create a long-lasting, conscious relationship with, one of the things you need to do is be able to identify what level of consciousness this man is operating at, and see like, okay, so if this is somebody who is just going to use me to get what he wants because he's completely overcome by this, drive, and he's just, he has no consideration for anything else. He's just trying to get a thrill right here, right now. This is probably not somebody I want to get involved with. And rather look for a man who has the consciousness to say, I want to choose consciously about who I get involved with and when I get involved with them and how I get involved with them and how that happens. And I want to make sure we do it in a way that is respectful to everybody involved. And I want to make sure that this person feels love and care when we engage with each other in a sexual way, and obviously any other way. I heard something on a show this morning, and I wish I could tell you who said it. I don't remember, but I heard something on a show. It just occurred to me right now that she said, how you're treated is the ultimate criteria above everything else. As long as you know how you want to be treated, and you look at your relationship objectively and you say, okay, am I being treated the way I want to be treated? That is like your ultimate criteria. And I think that's so true, because if you look at a man who is operating in a lower level of consciousness and a man who is operating in a higher level of consciousness, this man is naturally going to treat you the way you want to be treated. This man is going to naturally not treat you that way. And that's one of your biggest cues as to where this man is coming from and what you can expect from him. So going back to the original question, do men only want sex? Now, in a lower level of consciousness, the answer may be yes. Now, honestly, on the deepest levels, probably not. But all he might be able to access, given his current state of conscious, is his desire for sex. Like that, there are people who do live that way. In a higher level of consciousness, the answer is most definitely no. In fact, from the men I've worked with and the men, my friends and people that I know and myself, and what we've found is that while we still have this drive existing in us, it takes a back seat because we have the capacity to recognize, like, what I really want is somebody to come home to. What I really want is someone to share my life with. What I really want is to not be alone. What I really want is to have somebody to wake up to and go to sleep with and to adventure with and to travel with and to create a family with and to, create our dreams together. And what I really want is to have a partner in life. And I want to love and care and nurture somebody and have her feel safe and provide for her and like all this. That's like in higher levels of consciousness, that's what the masculine becomes. That's what the masculine steps into. So while that drive still exists on a certain level, that drive takes a back seat and all this other stuff takes a front seat. but that's in a higher level of consciousness. So what you really want to ask yourself when you're getting to know somebody is, what level of consciousness is this person operating from? Have they stepped into this loving, caring, concerning, honorable person, or are they still driven by this selfish motive to just get a thrill, to just take what they want, to feel satisfied for the moment? Because what the men over here will tell you is that, yeah, chasing women was fun and all that, but it was ultimately empty. And what I ultimately found was that it was lonely, and it was empty, and it was always unfulfilling, and I always felt unsatisfied. And what I found was this left me empty and hollow. And the men over here just have not discovered that yet. Now, if you know what kind of relationship you want, the next step is to determine what kind of man are you entertaining, and to do that. And that's something that we teach in our courses. So if you're interested in working with us, send us a DM to get some information on our upcoming courses. We'd love to chat with you about it. Thanks for watching this video. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me what you think. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.